So in this project we have a garage that's 36 by 28 feet. Foundations can be made out of concrete block, CMUs, 8-inch CMUs, 8 by 24 concrete footing, 2 by 4 framing, 5-inch thick slab, a roof that's built out of trusses, OSB, asphalt shingles with a roof pitch of 512. We're going to have insulation, and we're going to have some openings as described here. We went through and figured out, first of all, our criteria was that we use 11 by 17 piece of paper. So we went through and did the math and figured out that a 1/4 inch equals a foot scale will work very nicely for this. So we're going to use 1/4 inch equals a foot. Alright, so the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create this project in AutoCAD. So we're going to start a new drawing in AutoCAD. Right now I was doing some 3D stuff on the previous one, so just to make sure our workspace is correct. I'm going to come down here to our workspace setting, the little gear, bottom right hand side of the screen, and I'm going to change this to drafting and annotation. And I also have this set up for doing some laser work, so we're just going to delete that and take note of some different layers within here. Alright, so before I do anything at all in AutoCAD, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type in units, hit enter, and I'm going to choose architectural units. I'm going to make the precision go down to a 32nd of an inch, and I'm going to change the precision of my angle measurement so that it basically measures many zeros past the initial degrees. And I'm going to say OK. So right now I have a blank screen. I could start drawing, but before I do that, I want to start off by drawing my foundation. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to create a layer for my foundation. So whenever I'm creating my layer, I'm going to come up here to my layers, and I can click on my layer properties. And so with my layer property manager, I can come in here and I can see that my current layer is raster. So I want to make a layer for foundation. I know that typically my foundation layers would, or my foundation drawings would show up on a set of structural drawings. So I'm going to make a new layer, click this little button, and I'm going to say S-Foundation, and I'm going to make that color green. I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to leave it as continuous. I'm going to give it a shot, try to delete some of these dimensions that don't mean anything. I'm going to switch to my current layer, foundation. So I'm going to set that current. Delete out anything else that I don't need. So right now I just have layer 0 and I have the foundation layer. I'm going to close my layer dialog box, or dock it over here. And I'm going to come back into my screen, and I'm just going to draw a line. So I could come up here and I could choose line off there, or I could just type L, enter, and it asks me for a first point. So I'm just going to click a random point, and I'm going to turn on my ortho. And again, I could come down here and I could find ortho down here, or I could just hit F8. I'm going to point it in the direction that I want it to go, and I'm going to type 36 feet. Enter. And I'm going to have to actually get out of that command so that I can see zoom out for that. So I hit escape and zoomed out. So that right there is a 36-foot long line. I can type in list, select it, and I can see down here for the length it's 36 feet. Next, I can draw another line, and I'm going to hover over top of the end of this line, and right now my O snaps aren't set up. So to set up my O snaps, I'm going to come down here, find this little box here, and I'm going to choose the O snaps that I want to use. So I'm going to use endpoint, midpoint, center, quadrant, intersection, perpendicular. So right now my O snaps must not be on, so I could click that, and now they show up. I could also hit F3. So whenever I draw this next line, I want to grab or start at the end point for my first point. Point up and offset 28 feet. And then I'm just going to continue my line over 36 feet. And then I'm going to come down and pick the end point. So right now I have a rectangle that is 36 feet wide, 28 feet long for my foundation. Our job criteria showed that our foundation is 8 inches thick. So at this point, I'm going to use my offset command. I could come up here and I could choose offset from up here, or I could just hit O, enter. The first thing it's going to ask me for is specify offset distance. How thick is the concrete block? That's the question. I'm going to use 8-inch CMUs, so I'm going to type in 8. I'm going to select my object that I want to offset, and then I'm going to choose the side that I want to offset to. I need to offset to the interior because the exterior dimensions are 36 by 28. And I'm going to do that for each one of these lines. Whenever I'm working on AutoCAD, doing architectural plans, instead of just looking at these and thinking about them as lines, I'm trying to think about them as what they actually are representing. So right now we have the foundation represented. So we have to clean up these lines, and I'm going to use fillet to do that. So I'm going to click on fillet. I'm going to double check to make sure my radius is 0. And then I'm going to choose the inside. I'm going to choose the parts of the line that I want to keep. If I wanted to keep these parts, then I would pick these. I don't want to keep those. I want to get rid of those parts, so I'm going to choose those ones. And I can very simply come around and choose those. And that'll clean it up. Now what I could have also done, instead of using my fillet command and having to clean those up, I could have used my Pline command, PL enter, or I could find polyline up here, and I could have started out by drawing a 28-foot by 36-foot rectangle, or I could have even used my rectangle command. And now this is a P-line, I could offset 8 inches inward, and I don't have to clean up all the corners. And then if I don't want these to be P-lines anymore, I can just use my explode command, select them, and now they're individual lines. All right, so at this point I have the lines that represent my foundation drawn. I'm going to get rid of one of these. And at this point I could start drawing my footing. So my footing is going to be represented as a hidden line, because my cut plane, basically the point or the plane where I'm going to cut through all of my walls and look down at this from above, my cut plane is going to be cutting through the foundation, but it's not going to cut through my footing. So my footings are going to be shown as hidden lines. So the way that, so the very first thing I do before anything is I need to create a new layer. So before I went into my layer properties, I expanded this. I went through and I clicked on these little tiny buttons that are very hard to see. The other way that you can do this, the way that I like doing it, is I can type everything in and it appears down in my command line. So whenever I'm doing a lot of typing on the command line, the first thing I want more than one line of command, or one line of text showing. I like at least 2 or 3. I'm going to expand this up, and I can actually bring it out here as well. So I could type in LA, and it just pops up my layer dialog box. So instead, I'm going to type dash LA, and right now it's going to go through and it's going to give me all kinds of different options to choose from. I can make a layer, set a layer, new, rename, on, off, color, LT, LW. So the other thing about this, what I want to point out is whenever you look at these on the screen, you notice that this is a capital M, A, K, E with a blue capital M at the beginning. And what that really means is it's showing you what you have to type in right now for one of those choices. So right now, ON, capital ON, and capital OFF are what you have to type in to turn a layer on or off. And the reason being, if I just typed in capital O, it doesn't know if you're talking about on or off. You can come down here to reconcile or state, and you can see that it chooses other layers. Lock, it's LO, because capital L is designated for line type. So whenever you're first doing this, it doesn't really matter too much because you have to look at these and think about them. After you do this a few hundred times, setting up layers, you can go through and type these without thinking about them. So I'm going to go ahead and type M for make. So just to begin again, dash LA, enter, M for make, and now I can type in what layer name I want it to be. So I'm going to make this, again, it's going to be a structural layer, so I'm going to type S dash footing, enter, so that's the name of it. The color of it, I'm going to make it color number 10, which is a reddish color. And I'm going to make it, I'm going to also, and right now what it's doing is what color, or what layer do you want to make color number 10? And it says S-footing for the default. So I just hit enter again. And now I'm back to that original screen, and I can type LT for line type. And the line type I'm going to use is hidden. And I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to hit enter again. And then I'm going to go ahead and do escape to get out of the command. And you can see up here, it also, whenever you do it that way, it also makes the layer you just made the one that is current. So whenever I'm drawing a hidden line, it should be showing up dashed like this. And there's a good chance that it's not going to whenever I draw a line. I'll explain that after I draw it. It might actually do that, but probably won't. Alright, so there I have my line that I just drew that is supposed to be hidden, and it's not showing up hidden. Now if I zoom in real close to this, it is actually hidden. So the issue that I have right now is AutoCAD doesn't know what scale you're working with, because we haven't told it what scale you're working with yet. So what we have to do is we have to come down here and choose the annotation scale. So we already established, by doing the math and figure out how much space we have, that we're going to want to use a 1/4 inch equals a foot scale. So I'm going to come down here to my scale, and I'm going to choose a 1/4 inch. And you can see it didn't update that, and that has to do with these settings right here, whether it adds scales to current views and things like that, whether it adds it to objects. So I can physically pick out different objects and add different scales to them. It gets really complicated. It's best if we're just working with one scale, or easiest at this point. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to try drawing it again now that it's set at a 1/4 inch equals a foot. So now that it's set at a 1/4 inch equals a foot, you can see that whenever I draw it, it shows up hidden. So what I have to do now is I have to figure out how big the footing is, or how far the footing goes out past where the foundation is. So my footing, if you look at the design criteria, my footing is 24 inches wide. My foundation, it is 8 inches wide. So a lot of people, they could just do things like this. We could say, we could come in here, if I didn't want to do the math, I could come in here and I could draw a line from the side to side of the foundation, and then I could draw another line from the midpoint, and then I could offset that half the distance of the total width of the footing, which would be 12 inches. And now I have the lines that represent my footing. I could also do the math, and I could figure out that it's 8 inches away. I could double check that. I could double check using the DIST command. I could measure from endpoint to endpoint, and it tells me that it's 2 feet, or 24 inches. And then I could delete this. So if I can figure out that this is 8 inches away from here, I could also use the offset command. And there's a couple cool little features with the offset command. I'm going to do it the wrong way first. So the very first thing is specify offset distance. It's always going to default to the offset distance, and I'm going to type in 8, enter. The default for AutoCAD is in inches, so I don't have to type in inches every time. I'm just going to type 8, enter. Then I could choose the line that I want to offset, and I offset out. Now if I wanted to, I could do that, and then I could click on these, and I could come up here and I could change their layer. I can also use my offset command, and I can choose my layer option. And instead of using the source, right now the default is the source layer, and the source would be the thing that you're trying to offset. Instead of using the source layer, I could choose current, which is my S-footing layer, and then I'm going to choose my 8 inch, or I'm going to let it at my 8 inch offset, hit enter, and whenever I offset now, it's going to make it that layer, my footing layer, default. And again, I would have to come in here and use my fillet command to clean these up. Now, if I would have let these as my polylines, I wouldn't have had to clean these up. So I could do two different things to clean these up. I could trim, or I could fill it. So I'm just going to go around and clean these all up. And right now I have my foundation and my footing drawn. The next point would be, the next step would be to go through and figure out where, if and where any openings would be in my foundation wall. So our drawings, or our design criteria, said that these foundation walls are going to come up 8 inches above grade level. So whenever I draw these, that means that my door openings, my overhead door openings, and my man door openings are going to cut into or recess down into that layer, that top layer of CMUs, down one course of block, so that my door can open up onto my slab, as opposed to having an 8-inch step down from there. And probably what we'll really do is we'll do a half course so that the door opens up level with the slab and the door is still 4 inches above grade. But we have to find the location of those so that we can show it on this plan. So what we have to do is we have to go through and remember what our rules are for using modular dimensions and see if we can make those work the best that we can.